Nope, I haven't seen any of these movies that we're talking about.
Would it be so bad if an 84-year-old got into heroin?
Welcome to the Cat Organizational Podcast.
You idiot. It's written down in front of you idiot.
This is like the buffalo chicken wrap of answers.
I haven't heard about hot orcs in a while.
We were so horny for motion controls in 2005.
I can't wait to come back and tell you how it was Noah's Ark, you asshole.
I would also like to retroactively say I've never had cotton candy acid.
So Andrew's 100% doing a voice, right?
Everybody get off IMDb now. Time to record.
This episode and probably this whole podcast is a mistake.
No, I'm going to talk about One Piece. All right, 3, 2, 1. Hello, welcome to Debate This, the show where we talk about One Piece.
No, I don't want to talk about One Piece.
No,
I want to talk about anything other than One Piece.
Hello, welcome to Debate This, the show where no one is right, but someone is definitely wrong, especially Matt, because he's wrong about about everything about One Piece being bad.
About Ghost Rider and about One Piece.
Bringing some weird energy tonight.
This is a sidebar? You're not supposed to attack me. This is a sidebar.
In this show, we talk about comic books, video games, and how I am basically just sweat at this point. So we're not going to talk about One Piece today. Instead, we're going to go back to the wonderful world of comics. Now, normally, folks, for a sidebar discussion like today's, you would see us breaking down the latest MCU movie, maybe talking about rumors, or the 3 separate occasions that Todd definitely attempted to watch Dark Phoenix on a plane.
It's true. I spent over 24 hours on 2 planes to and from New Zealand, and it took 3 tries.
You've put more effort into watching Dark Phoenix than I have in my career.
Fair. Yeah.
Unfortunately, since, as many of you know, the world came to a screeching halt a few months ago, we're
Really?
going to have to...
I wasn't aware.
Yeah.
I missed
We're
that.
going to instead reflect on the past in order to move forward into the future.
Isn't
How about
that one X-Men movie? That's
Yeah.
an X-Men movie, isn't it?
It sure is.
We're just fortunate
sure
that podcasts can get directly beamed into my Fallout bunker that I've retreated into.
And because we mostly like to talk about things that are bad here on our show, I've gotten the band back together for one last rodeo so each of us can share our personal examples of a movie that we each secretly love but know that everyone else hates. So, joining me today are Kyle Ford-tastic Harper.
It's Fan-Forstic.
Sorry, Fortastic is my father.
which is a movie I tried to watch on a plane in a similar capacity. Todd Halle Berry's horned up basketball adventure, Thomas.
Which
Man,
I
that's
watched for the
Yep.
first time today.
Yeah, I'm glad you did.
I haven't seen Catwoman, but I've seen that clip 8 times.
That's all you need to see is that clip.
It doesn't go down smoother anytime either.
No, it's bad. And finally, Matt, this workplace has gone 0 days without talking about Ghost Rider Cole.
That is how I feel about my whole life this week. It had been a couple of months since I thought about Ghost Rider, and I've thought about Ghost Rider every day since Monday.
Yeah. Now, listeners at home, I know we hit you with some weird energy here, and we're going to keep that weird energy going. We're going to talk about today the fact that, there are a lot of things that the internet loves to dunk on. Nickelback, other examples. I don't know. I can't think of any other examples. It depends on the week. But and many of those things certainly deserve it. But there are others out there that I think are more hated because it's cool to hate on, i.e. Nickelback. And again, we're not going to get into Nickelback because Matt's already talking about Ghost Rider. And if Matt talks about Nickelback and Ghost Rider, the universe explodes.
Matt's pulling up one of his 20-page files on his computer about Nickelback.
Adjust glasses.
Yeah. But I think it could be a fun exercise to just go around and talk about a little bit about what's a good example of one of those just commonly hated superhero movies, and then get into a little bit about why they're hated, or what's the one thing that's most notorious, and then what are they actually redeemable about. Let me say that again. What's actually redeemable about them? Who wants to start? Todd, do you want to start?
I'll start.
Todd?
I'll start just because I know that you also want to talk about the same hero in a different franchise. and I did not do the extensive research that I think the other two
Same.
fellows did. So it is not necessarily my favorite superhero movie by far, but I think it was a movie that was supposed to be really, really good and just wasn't. So I want to talk about Amazing Spider-Man 2. So this is not Sam Raimi Spider-Man. This is something Webb. Webb was the last name of the guy? Mark Webb. Mark Webb.
Which is kind of wild.
Yeah, your last name's Webb, and you were the director of Spider-Man movies. So to step back a minute and go to Amazing Spider-Man 1, I think it was a pretty good movie. It did well in the box offices. People liked Andrew Garfield enough. It had a lot of good things as far as it introduced the Lizard as a bad guy, which is like, I think, very good when it came to introducing Spider-Man, like a new franchised
It was
Spider-Man.
like a solid B origin story. Like,
Yeah,
I was
well-
excited to see where it was headed. After
Well, what
that movie.
I liked was the way that they did it was they obviously gave you the whole like runaround of he's been bitten by a spider, blah blah blah. But like he dealt with a threat that was extremely street level and personal to his life. Like that was like, hey, it's Spider-Man, he can do these things. So, obviously when Spider-Man 2 was rolling around, they wanted to like broaden it a little bit. I have a list of things that are very wrong with this movie, but I think, and I think the biggest thing is just going to be like, they just tried to pour gas on a fire and just try and blow open the entire Spider-Man universe to try and, I guess, catch up to what Marvel was doing. So,
Hey Todd, just a question, because again, like as a self-proclaimed Spider-Man fan, I have never seen the Amazing Spider-Man movies, and I don't intend to.
I think I have them on DVD.
Cool, keep them. For a sense of context, so Spider-Man 3 Raimi style came out in 2007.
Yeah, it was around. It was the late. It was pre-2010.
Wait, I have that.
because
Spider-Man 3 was May 4th of 2007.
So when was Amazing Spider-Man 1?
I do not know.
2012?
it was
See,
2012.
That's not enough time.
Well,
Nope.
and
That's
so
not
and-
enough time.
And the thing is that this reboot came off the heels of them canceling Spider-Man 4. So Spider-Man 4 was supposed to happen, and they're like, nah, you know what? We made a mistake in the third Spider-Man by trying to cram too much in. So let's bail. Let's start again in a couple years, and then when we do the sequel to that movie, let's cram as much in as we can because we didn't learn our lesson the first time.
We see that we gave you too much. Now consider, what if we gave you more
More than that.
Yeah. What if, like, in Spider-Man 3, they were like, let's give you a functioning Green Goblin that goes from enemy to ally. Let's give you Sandman and his complete story. Also, let's give you Venom. Just, let's give you Venom. You want it. You want it so you can have it. And so, anyway, when they got to Amazing Spider-Man 2, they jumped at it too quick. Too much, too soon. That the note I put in here was ham-fisted with too many characters. And so, in Amazing Spider-Man 2, did the other... I know Andrew didn't see it, but did you other two see Amazing Spider-Man 2?
I did.
I did not. I won't lie.
Okay.
I've not.
Kyle said that with a 1,000-yard stare.
So
Todd, I'm waiting to hear the redeemable parts you find in this
I
movie.
think I have like 2 or 3, and most of them are they allowed Tom Holland to exist. But the thing about Amazing Spider-Man 2 is that so in 1 you don't get Harry Osborn. You do not get Peter's friend Harry. What you do get is you get Harry Osborn in Amazing Spider-Man 2 looking very emo-like, and you immediately are like, all right, you're going to be a bad guy, but when are you going to be a bad guy?
Oh,
and
it's so awful, because he doesn't come in till like halfway through the movie either.
And then like half an hour later, they're like, you are full-on Green Goblin now. You are sick, and you took some sort of venom. I think they call it a venom. You took a weird venom, and it's given you goblin-like features, and you have to wear this machine so that you don't die, and now you're the Green Goblin. Here you go. And so, like, they ran off with all this shit.
There's three villain origin stories in that movie, if I'm not mistaken.
Technically. So they give you Green Goblin just in full.
Yeah.
They give you Electro, which
Also in full.
yeah,
Like,
which I liked Jamie Foxx. I did not like him as Electro. I think
No,
they
it-
did a bad job,
it
but
was
I
a
liked
terrible performance by Jamie Foxx.
Yeah. And then they give you just at the very end, probably the biggest crime they had here was Paul Giamatti as Rhino.
What? Paul Giamatti's in that picture?
Time out. I'll get you there. Stick with me. So the opening scene of the movie is there's this guy who's like this Russian crazed scientist or something stealing this MacGuffin. And it's a really cool scene where Spider-Man's like chasing the car down the street. He's doing backflips and he's catching it. And nothing can shatter, and it's really fantastic. Well, it's Paul Giamatti, and he does the typical Spider-Man thing by like catching him, like webbing his pants down to his ankles, then like hanging him upside down or something. I don't know, whatever.
But-
Wait.
Okay, I'm waiting.
They showed Paul Giamatti in the Rhino outfit in the teaser trailers, so you know it's coming.
Featured heavily in all the promotional art too. He had his own poster.
However, to spoil this movie for you, Emma Watson, who plays Gwen Stacy as the love interest, which was good.
Wait, hold on. No, I'm going to stop you.
Stone.
It's Emma Stone.
Emma Stone. Different Emma. Both are great. Emma Stone, who plays...
Emma Stone, if you're listening, we're sorry.
Sorry about it. She plays Gwen Stacy as the love interest, which they ditched MJ to start, which I thought was a cool plan. Anyway, she dies, and it's a good death. It's a great scene.
Yeah.
Now, that's one of the redeeming like 3 things that I noted today.
It's also the one redeeming quality about that character, Gwen Stacy's character, is that she always dies.
Yeah.
But so when she dies, Spider-Man's like, "Nah, I can't do this anymore. I'm done." However, at the very, very end, he picks back up the mask, and it shows him like standing down Paul Giamatti as the Rhino. And so they've built up Paul Giamatti in all these previews, and you don't even get to see Spider-Man fight him because it cuts away.
Cuts to credits immediately.
Cuts to credits to be like, Spider-Man is back fighting crime now. It's fine.
It like totally cuts to credits. Like there's no post-credit scene of him fighting Rhino.
Nope.
Nope. The
Nothing.
post-credit scene is a big tease to Sinister Six. So this movie that came out in 2014 was just a huge thing where it's like, we need to just set pace and dump gas in it, and we need to build a whole universe. We gotta go. We can't wait. Where in reality, they could have just like fixed so much of everything by just giving it a little bit of pacing. If they would have taken some of what they decided just to like fly into and save it for the third one, they could have potentially built up to have like this full trilogy and then a trilogy after it. Now, like, to hit some of the redeeming qualities, I already said Emma Stone, she was great as now I'm gonna keep forgetting her name.
Gwen Stacy.
Gwen Stacy, there it is.
She was great as Emma Watson.
Emma Stone was great as Gwen Stacy, and like her death scene is really, really good. I also think it's always really good when a comic book movie, superhero movie, is brave enough to like kill a major character, just because it doesn't happen a lot.
Yeah.
I give them credit for doing some not yet visited Spider-Man villains like Electro and Rhino. Give me Rhino. I want that. I want a dude in a big Rhino suit who flips cars and punches things.
I want Paul Giamatti.
I want Paul Giamatti back as Rhino. I didn't realize I wanted Paul Giamatti in the MCU until just now.
I think that's the biggest casualty there, is like Paul Giamatti absolutely deserves to be a villain.
Yeah.
But not like that.
He did a good job for what he was on. Like, when we're done here today, both you three, especially you two that haven't seen
the
it.
Royal We. All of us.
The Royal
all
We.
Of us here
all
on
of
planet
us.
Earth.
The Spider's Man. We should go and just watch the YouTube clips of Paul Giamatti from this movie. I just saw the Paul Giamatti picture in the notes. That's pretty good. And you at home as well, like, just watch this Paul Giamatti clips because they're good.
He put work into the character.
Yeah, and then got dropped on his face in the end when they're like, "Sorry, we're out."
Because Paul Giamatti is somebody who 100% fits into Michael Keaton's Sinister Six. Like, if you put Paul Giamatti's Rhino with Michael Keaton's Vulture,
man.
Can we just have a movie that's Michael Keaton's Sinister Six? And it's an Ocean's 11 style heist movie. It's just Michael Keaton saying, "All right, boys, it's time to roll out."
The last
100%.
The last two, I think, redeeming things that come from this is that I do think Andrew Garfield got a bad hand dealt to him, because I think he was not a bad Spider-Man and Peter Parker. I think he was a bit more like leaning on the nerdy, awkward Peter Parker than you want him to be, but I don't think he was bad by any stretch of the imagination.
If I'm not mistaken, Amazing is an actual like separate run of Spider-Man, right?
It's one of the runs, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And
then
wait, hold on, clear this up for me, because again, I haven't seen,
Yeah, you're
honestly,
good.
I'm realizing I haven't seen either of the Andrew Garfield movies. I just
I
decided,
have the DVD.
I decided that
as I formally mentioned.
No, it's okay. You can keep them. I just decided that I didn't like them, but I'm realizing I've never seen either of them. Isn't the Amazing Spider-Man comic the one where he has the web canisters versus the regular Spider-Man where he doesn't have the web canisters?
No, he always.
I think that's flipped.
Yeah.
Okay.
The cartoon and the cartoon, the original canon, I think he doesn't. In the cartoon, he does. And the cartoon, I believe, was based on the like 70s or 80s run, perhaps.
Sure. Okay.
Which is I think the same from what Raimi is pulled from.
This is a long walk to the park for me to ask
It
you.
It doesn't matter.
Todd, who has seen these movies, does Andrew Garfield have web canisters? Yes or
Web
no?
canisters.
Yes.
He
Okay.
makes he makes web canisters himself in the movie.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
On a Sony Vio.
Perfect.
Dated as fuck.
Yeah, I honestly, that's probably one of my shortcomings as a like Spider-Man fan, is that I don't know what the settled history / origin of like web canisters or not. But I having cut my teeth on comic book cartoons, it was always web canisters, so that's what I choose to have as the canon.
Sure.
People were pretty upset when the Raimi Spider-Man didn't use web
Oh yeah, you're
canisters.
right.
Well,
He
I
and you
remember
know
that.
that the people that are sitting in the
flipped.
theaters largely watched the comic book or the cartoon, so why would you make that choice? I know why he made that choice, so that Jack Black during the MTV Movie Awards could then make the joke about Spider-Man shooting web on a picture of an actress. That was a thing that happened. It was a jizz joke, is what it was.
Thanks for writing that one out, Todd.
It was a different time.
Yeah. So the last redeemable thing that I think does come from this movie, as I had kind of said before, we did get Tom Holland out of the divorce. But the other thing was that because this bombed when it did, when we did get Tom Holland in Civil War, which Civil War came out in like
16,
15
I
maybe?
just looked.
16?
It was 16.
Nice. So because this bombed in 2014, we got a reboot, which then led to Tom Holland coming into Civil War fresh for that reboot to do whatever he wants to 2 years later. That also meant that because they didn't sprint through whatever they were doing here, when we finally did get Venom, which I'm not here to talk if Venom was a good movie or not, because that's its own
It's
thing.
not.
I think it's good. It's
not.
good enough, and it suffered from bad writing.
It's good at being a bad movie.
I have more faith in the second one. I'm not here to talk about Venom.
Is your faith in Woody Harrelson, or
It's my faith is that the feedback they got was your writing was bad, your movie could have been good, and that they're like, all right, maybe we'll actually do good writing now.
Nah.
Anyway,
Sweet
maybe they
Summer
won't.
Child.
I'll still go see it. Not in
Of course you
theaters,
will, and
because
that's why
theaters are-
that's why
all
they're
they
not going to
want.
change. Because
Okay,
they
I'm
know
here
that
to talk
those butts are
about
getting
Andrew
seen.
Garfield's Amazing Spider-Man 2. The point being, because this bombed, it then because the forest burnt down, life could grow anew. And I think that's what's important here with the Amazing Spider-Man 2 Electric
So one of
Boogaloo.
its redeemable qualities is it was so bad they had to start over again.
They had to tear apart the house and take all the good pieces they could and sell them. And be like, all right, we're gonna try anew here.
It's like when if your toilet overflows and causes damage in your ceiling, and then that reveals that you had black mold in your house.
Yeah. So
And you're like, thank you, toilet, for unclogging for helping me find that.
and that is my analogy for Amazing Spider-Man 2. Yeah.
All right,
Anyway, I'm just here to say Paul Giamatti should be in the Marvel Universe. Paul Giamatti,
hit us up.
call me, call us,
Call Todd.
call Todd. Call to me specifically.
1-800 call Todd. Okay, Kyle, why don't you talk about a movie that you actually like?
So the movie I'm here to talk about is Man of Steel.
boo?
Zack Snyder Superman movie launching the weird Justice League cinematic universe we're living in.
Kyle, before you start, can I tell one brief anecdote about Man of Steel?
Please do.
Please.
Okay, so for the longest time as I was growing up, my dad and I would go and see all of the Superman movies in theaters together. Honestly, we'd see all the superhero movies in theaters together, but my dad's a big Superman fan. And when we went and saw, I have it written down because I don't remember what it's called. I don't know. The bad Superman. Maybe
Superman Returns.
Was Superman Returns a bad one?
It wasn't the best.
Yeah, I think it was Superman Returns. We went and saw Superman Returns, and we watched the whole movie, and both of us were like, "That was awful. That was so bad."
That's the Kevin Spacey one, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that happened. Yada yada yada. Life goes on. And I was working at a summer camp when Man of Steel came out, and my dad, because we weren't in the same town, went and saw Man of Steel without me, and I texted him the night of the movie. I was like, Dad, like, how was Man of Steel? Because I'm gonna go see it this weekend, like as soon as it's my off day. And my dad was like, do you remember Superman Returns? And I was like, yeah. He was like, do you remember how bad that was? I was like, yeah. He was like, it was much worse.
Oh no.
So that's my frame of reference for Man of Steel. And I'm curious to hear your 5 pages of notes.
Well, we'll see what gets used out of that. So what Man of Steel is the Zack Snyder Superman movie, hot off the heels of Batman or The Dark Knight Returns. That's very much what Zack Snyder was told to make the Dark Knight Returns of Superman movies.
Sure.
And that's what we got, and that was a bad decision. So within that is a good movie, is what I'm saying. Like if Zack Snyder had gotten to, didn't try to like copy Christopher Nolan's like weird out of order storytelling and made a movie, we might have gotten a better movie than we did. It's got like Henry Cavill is an amazing Superman, like looks the part, a little too emotionless, but like that's bad directing. He could have been better. Michael Shannon was a very good Zod.
I thought he was a good Zod. I enjoyed
It had all the
all the-
trappings.
It
It
had
was
all
like
the right parts
on
It
paper,
just-
yeah.
It just didn't get put together properly.
So I have not seen in full any of the older Superman movies. I've just seen like bits and pieces. And for me, I enjoyed some of the storytelling they did. But again, I lean back on, now that I know what you just said, that they built it after the Dark Knight Rises. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Now that I know that like that was the framework, I can see where they went wrong, because like I don't need gritty start to
Yeah.
Henry Cavill's Superman. I need
Precisely.
like I need less of that, and I need more of what the tones they were going for in the first Captain America movie, where
Yeah.
it's like you're a beacon of hope and good, and shit just sucks.
Right, and tone is what it's all about. And we'll talk about it a little bit, but I mean, like that's not Superman. Like that's Batman. That's not Superman.
Yeah.
And that's basically like if you fix not making a Batman movie again, it could have been a good movie. Zack Snyder, he reads the comics, he adapts, he read Watchmen, he did his best to be faithful to the Watchmen comic. He sets up a great shot. There's amazing shots in that movie of Superman, like the fights feel very intense, and like you kind of get the best feel for like how strong and powerful Superman is in this movie. When he's fighting Zod, you see him he tries to do the beacon of hope thing. He just does it. He tells it and doesn't show it as well as a better director would have.
If we're looking to pile the trash then on what we don't like about this movie, I found the somewhat nameless Kryptonian super soldiers that Superman had to fight to just break up the movie and
The
add
mini
more
bosses.
Yeah, the mini bosses, to just show more destruction. I thought that was bad. I thought that was bad.
And that's the other thing is Zack Snyder needs a better editor, because it's like a 3-hour movie that could have been an hour and a half.
That is,
Yeah.
I think we might have been talking about this before we started recording, but I fell asleep watching this, and this came out when I was really starting to get into like midnight releases of movies, and like I was living in Florida at the time, and so I was like going to them by myself, like, which is a weird thing to do, but that's what I did. And like for this to be a superhero movie that I had not seen yet, that I watched at a buddy's house and I fell asleep watching at like 8 p.m. on a Friday. Like I fell asleep for probably a good half an hour and woke up and I was like, oh no, I still know what's going on. All right, we're good.
Because it's a superhero movie. Like it doesn't need to be. I mean, no superhero movie needs to be 3 hours. I'm sorry. Like
Yep.
Endgame wasn't even 3 hours.
Oh
Yeah.
I want to hear the redeeming parts of this movie.
Yeah.
I also want that. Yes.
The redeeming parts are the action. I think the action and I thought the fight scenes did a very good job of showing, like, you know, two Kryptonians fighting. The Superman Returns, my biggest complaint is Superman didn't feel strong because the things he was lifting didn't feel real because they were CGI. And this felt very real in the world.
Can I to point out more stuff about this movie that was bad? When his dad gets torn away by a tornado.
Oh.
And the only reason why okay, everyone here has seen this, right?
Nope, I haven't seen any of these movies that we're talking about.
That's my whole what I would fix.
Oh, okay, then I'll leave it for you because like
I'm never gonna watch this. So you please spoil it.
I'll let Kyle say it because when I watch that moment, I'm like, this is stupid. And I like when you watch a comic book movie and you're pulled out of the reality and you're like, well, this is just dumb that he didn't solve this problem because he's the most powerful hero on Earth.
To set it up, Pa Kent dies. Clark Kent's dad, adoptive dad.
His name is also Martha.
Martha.
Everyone's name is Martha.
Isn't it Tom?
Or
am I thinking of Thomas Welling, who played Superman in Smallville, which is the only Superman canon that I know?
Superman's dad's name.
Jonathan.
Sure.
Jonathan Kent.
Perfect.
He gets sucked up by a tornado and dies because
What? Who gets sucked up by a tornado?
Wait.
Because he tells his son Superman not to save him to protect his secret.
Yeah, because if Superman would use his super speed to go save his dad, half a dozen people would know that he is Superman, and that's too much.
Yeah.
Who cares? He could just kill them.
Well, that's not the point.
No one would know.
No, that's not the point.
Or he could just be like, hey, I'm Superman. Don't tell anyone. Me, this nondescript white dude who you may not ever see again.
Yeah, like it. What?
Yeah, and it's supposed to be this really emotional moment when like Superman's getting ready to go save his dad, and his dad just holds up his hand.
While he's like flying in a tornado.
Well, like before the tornado just like takes him away.
Yeah, he's like pinned in a car again, and
that's dumb.
Stupid.
It's so dumb.
Yeah.
So that's my. We'll cover that more when in what would I fix. That's all.
It was a bad movie. It was a bad movie.
It could have been better.
I mean. Unlike Spider-Man, this is a franchise that they haven't really been able to make a good movie of since like the Christopher Reeve movies.
Yeah.
I mean, I think those are generally considered like pretty good, at least the first couple ones, maybe.
Yeah.
Even that, the next time they visited him was Batman versus Superman, which wasn't a good movie. Mm-mm. And then after that, they brought him back for Justice League, which was also not a good movie. And then Henry Cavill wasn't even signed on to be Superman for a while because he didn't do the cameo in Shazam at the end of the movie. Yeah. Because at that point he wasn't signed back on, but now he is signed back on.
Which one was the digital mustache?
Justice League.
Justice League.
Okay. Which one was Ben Affleck in?
Batman versus Superman.
Superman and Justice League.
Wait. Oh, Ben Affleck was Batman. Never mind.
Yeah, he was Batfleck.
I've not seen any
He's
DC.
the beefy Batman.
I've never seen any DC movies.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So, okay, Matt.
Is it my turn? Oh,
yeah. Turn,
okay. So
crack your beers now, guys.
To stay on brand, I'm here to talk about Ghost Rider, of course. And I think I've said on the podcast a few times that Ghost Rider 2007, starring Nicolas Cage and Eva Mendes, is one of my favorite movies of all time. And I will...
An MBA's thesis by Matt Cole.
I will hear all the arguments that, like, it's not good or whatever, but, like, it's one of my favorite movies. That being said, Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance, in the vernacular Ghost Rider 2, but I found out this week it's not a sequel. Anyway, Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance is, in my opinion, possibly the worst movie of all time ever. So, Ghost Rider 2007, I want to talk about in this like first question of what is a movie that I like that everybody else dunks on. And that is the first Ghost Rider movie, which I am again here to tell you that if it were released today with minimal changes, it would be one of the better MCU movies. Because, and again, I watched both of these this week. The 2007 Ghost Rider has all of the makeups of a good MCU movie. And it's sort of scripted similarly to like Ant-Man or Guardians of the Galaxy or Thor Ragnarok. I'm not going to say it's like the top tier MCU movie by any means, but it's got the scripting of a more comedic superhero movie.
Okay.
It's got the
dark comedy.
Doesn't take itself too seriously.
It's got the quips already.
Right. And honestly, 2007 Ghost Rider, watching it 13 years later, holds up. Like, the movie looks good. The CGI is not laughable. It's not over the top. Like, 2007 is that prime Transformers era of like, this is too much. This is just too much CGI. And Ghost Rider 2007 isn't that. It's got the right amount of CGI and it's not painful to watch, which is good.
Which is a good start.
Yeah. I think the thing this movie gets dumped on for the most is, of course, Nicolas Cage. Because why wouldn't you dump on Nicolas Cage? And I am here to make this
Hollywood's easiest target.
That is the children's book that I was read as a child. Why wouldn't you dump on Nicolas Cage?
I am here to make the same argument I have made for 13 years, which is Nicolas Cage is a great choice for the character of Johnny Blaze. Because Johnny Blaze is supposed to be this very aloof loner. Sold his soul, his emotions, all of his love, everything.
Like Nick Cage did years ago.
Right. Yeah. Sold everything to the devil at the crossroads and is a shell of a man. Now, Ghost Rider 2007 did a really good job of taking the incredibly convoluted backstory of Ghost Rider and distilling it down to a consumable, watchable movie, which is really important because trying to follow the story of Ghost Rider is awful. It's impossible. Ghost Rider is a character with a great backstory. Guy sells soul to devil to save dad. Dad dies because the devil always gets his deal, but the devil saved him from cancer, so whatever. But because Guy sold soul, devil turns Guy into flaming Ghost Rider motorcycle assassin bounty hunter for the devil. Great backstory.
A tale as old as time.
Yep. Okay. Now try and take that backstory and turn that into any sort of like future plot. It's garbage. It's convoluted. Fucking God is there. Archangels are there. Like, it's a mess.
It doesn't really have legs.
Yeah.
There was a surprising amount of like movies based on like weird Christian folklore around this time too. Like it definitely like fit into a notch that Hollywood was trying to fill.
Right.
Because like Constantine came out around the same time.
Da Vinci Code wasn't far after.
Da Vinci Code.
Isn't Constantine a comic series too though?
Yeah,
it is.
DC, I think. So yeah, Ghost Rider 2007 takes a really convoluted storyline of the Ghost Rider, distills it down into something that's easy to follow, gives you Nick Cage, like, not overacting. Like, this is not the most overacted Nick Cage movie that there is by a long shot. I would say that his performance in Ghost Rider 2007 is akin to his performance in the first National Treasure movie, where it's there. It's what you want that character to be. Like, you want that character to be Nick Cage.
It's just the right amount of Cage.
They kept the leash on him. There's one scene of weird Nick Cage freak out, but like they CGI'd it enough to make it make sense. It's fine. Eva Mendes is fine. The subplot of Ghost Rider and Roxanne being this like lost lovers thing is fine. You could cut that whole thing out. It wouldn't change the movie. Whatever. And yeah, it's pretty comic book accurate. A lot of the comic book characters are there. You have Mephisto as the devil, which is great. You've got Blackheart as the son of Mephisto, which is great. They threw Wallow in there, which is like a really deep comic book cut. So, I mean, that's cool. They threw Carter Slade in there, which is awesome because Carter Slade was the first Ghost Rider before Ghost Rider became a flaming skull on a motorcycle, back when it was a guy in a white suit on a horse in the 60s. Like, they had a lot of good comic book callbacks. The CGI holds up. The Ghost Rider fight scenes are pretty cool.
I do remember what was really a very cringy part of this movie is how 2007 emo the villain is.
Yeah.
And that it is the kid from American Beauty.
Yeah.
Oh, what's his name?
Wes Bentley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wes Bentley's
Bentley.
Blackheart is probably the worst part of this movie, if we're being completely honest.
Yeah, it's real bad.
Blackheart in the comics is like this huge black spiky demon. And they kept Wes Bentley as a human, or like in a human form for most of the movie, which is really good. Because like, if you would have put big black spiky demon into this movie, then it really would have been too much. A lot of the worst scenes are when like Wes Bentley's human form starts to warp into his demon form, and it looks not great.
Dreadful.
Yeah.
Big black spiky demon is my favorite card to play in Cards Against Humanity.
Yeah. And that's 2007 Ghost Rider. Like, you've got a story that's easy to follow. You've got actors who fill the roles they need to fill. You've got CGI that isn't painful to watch. Like, this is a movie that gets dumped on because Nicolas Cage is the star, when it has a lot more to offer than what you typically think of as Nicolas Cage stars in a movie. And for that, I say it's really good. There are a couple of bad things about it. It moves a little bit too fast. Some of it is convoluted. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I have the extended director's cut 2-disc special on DVD, and that's what I watched this week. And if you watch the extended cut, it all makes pretty decent sense. But the movie itself moves a little bit too fast.
Says everyone.
Yeah.
With the director's cut.
Right, I know. I'm an apologist. I won't apologize for being a Ghost Rider apologist, but the biggest drawback of the movie is that Blackheart and his gang of fallen angels is like a little rushed and a little ridiculous, and they introduce one of these elemental archangels, excuse me, and they kill him 4.5 minutes later, like just right away.
Well, they took the same amount of time developing that archangel before they killed him as they did to develop Green Goblin as Harry Osborn before they fully made him Green Goblin.
Right.
Weren't those like elemental like X Games writers? Wasn't that the villain part of the villain too? Weren't they all like BMX riders possessed by the devil, or am I thinking of something that's completely different? I
have a weird, you're pinging a weird memory in my brain. It's not Ghost Rider related. I don't know what it is, but no, they're not. They're based on comic book characters. Only one of them is actually from the comic books. And honestly, in the theatrical cut, they get no explanation. It's just like they're there. And that was bad. But in the extended cut, there is a small scene of them being like, "You, Antichrist, why did you call us here?" And him being like, "To steal all these souls." And they're like, "Okay." And that's about all the explanation that you get. But so that part is bad. I'll admit that. Some of the writing is bad. Some of the directing, like camera angle wise, is weird. Most of the movie is very consistent, and then there are these moments of like, under the chin camera shots and really aggressive side shots that it's like, quit that.
That image that you get if you open up the camera while you're looking at your phone. And you go, oh.
It's when everyone accidentally turns on selfie mode when they're on Instagram. You just see your 3 chins. So Matt, would you say, like, to summarize, like very similar to Man of Steel, like on paper it had all of the elements, but just like that Stu didn't cook.
Honestly, I would even take it farther than Man of Steel. I would say that in 2007, when we didn't know what a good comic book movie looked like, and our examples of great comic book movies were like X-Men 2 and the first Fantastic Four and Raimi Man.
Batman Begins had come out.
Batman Begins. Sure. There was not room for like a B-grade superhero movie the way that now Guardians of the Galaxy has kind of paved that path for like, you don't need to be all action all the time A-list superhero, and you can have a ridiculous story and you can tell it in a way that is consumable.
He's saying if this came out next year as a like Ant-Man standalone type movie that sort of advances an MCU plot, it would be judged about the same.
Yeah. Yep. So to summarize, and then I'll shut up. Basically, if any of you on this call, the listeners, the royal we, go back and watch 2007's Ghost Rider, and you will enjoy it more than you're expecting to. I promise. Do not, however, watch 2011's Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance, which I will talk about in the next question, a movie that makes you watch Ghost Rider take a flaming piss not once, but twice. And I want to turn the mic over to someone else now. Thank you.
Cool.
Ghost Rider is only available for streaming if you have Stars.
Okay. Well, I guess no one's going to see Ghost Rider. All right. Well, I'll just talk very briefly because Todd obviously already covered Spider-Man. So I wanted to talk quickly about Spider-Man 3, which I think is, of these, probably like the most memed, but maybe the most loved of these four movies, maybe.
It's now in the same category the internet holds the Star Wars prequels, where they're like, they celebrate them for what they are.
We've all cooled on it, but I'll talk about a little bit when it came out. I was huge into growing up with the cartoons. Like this was like my favorite time, like watching those Sam Raimi movies. And I think Batman Begins, while it's an important movie, I personally hated Batman Begins when I first saw it. I've obviously cooled off on it, but I think it was a very bad thing to happen to comic book movies, and was kind of the beginning of the end of that era. And really we didn't see this come back until, I would argue, Guardians of the Galaxy, and that's camp. Man, I love camp. I mean, that's me too. I love anything that's campy, and I think what a really great thing about comic books is comics have a lot of camp, and that's what I think has stood the test of time and is a really fun part of their personality. And the Raimi movies definitely had that, right? Like what I love about the old Spider-Man cartoon is like Peter Parker is such a fucking nerd. And he's just like, and he has all these like these dad joke one-liners, and he's constantly like, man, what am I gonna do next? Like it's so cheesy, and I love that, and I've always loved that specifically about Peter Parker. And I think Tobey Maguire really did capture that element of Peter Parker better than, I would argue, the other two that we have.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
They've always consistently had like Peter Parker equals nerd, and I think like Tom Holland's take on is like, what would Peter Parker be today? Which is like, that's fine. It's good for what it is. But Tobey Maguire's was like legitimately like, this guy's a fucking dork.
Shoved into lockers.
Oh yeah,
lunch tray flipped over.
And I think and they did a really good job in that in the first one. In the second one, we started getting away from that. He's ripped now, and like everybody loves him. And I think what they tried to do with Spider-Man 3 was obviously they tripped over the finish line, right? And Todd already said it. They did one too many things, and I think if you would have removed one of the things that they were doing in Spider-Man 3, that would have been a great movie. The thing that they should absolutely not have moved, and then they nailed, is the emo scene. I love that scene.
So I find us here standing on the hill that you wish to die on.
This is actually the hill. I have protected this scene since I saw it in the theater, and I will Ghost Rider this to my grave.
So I have a defense for it too, but I'm interested to hear what yours is.
Here's my tight 5 on that scene. I think Peter Parker is a dork. And Peter Parker, the whole point of getting the black suit and showing him that transformation was he is doing
To
something
sell
that is
more
that is-
toys because he got it
sell
on a
more
foreign
toys because he got
planet
it on a
as
foreign
part
planet.
of the Secret Wars.
because he's the intent is to show that Peter Parker is not inherently evil. He will never be evil. He doesn't know how to be a bad dude. And Peter Parker at his most villainous or at his most dark is just kind of a turd. and he is such a genuinely good person, and he is such a boner that like the most darkest thing that he can think of doing is like talking to a lady
Dancing
in a not so
at a
great way.
jazz club.
Going
Dancing
to
at
a jazz club. Yeah.
Going to the Footloose town. Like that's
Yeah.
what he does. And he swipes, but again, like and that's what I loved about that is like he thought he was being really cool, but like everyone else was like, "What are you doing, you nerd?" Like and that's what I loved about that. It was so like honest.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So my defense of that, because like I think it should be defended, because of course everyone hated it, was that I again grew up watching the cartoon every day after school. The episode where he got the symbiote and he was running around in the black spider suit. At one point, I think he threatens Eddie Brock, and he picks him up off the ground and like says something like well maybe it's time that I grew a backbone, and like throws him on the ground. And Mary Jane is like, I don't know what's gotten into you, Peter. Like, I don't like this at all.
Yeah.
And the narrative ends up being that like the symbiote amplifies like your worst behaviors, or like it amplifies your worst emotions. And so like to me, his like the canon in the movie was that it like amplified his like selfishness or like desire to be cool or what he thought was cool. Like it amplified a bad like character trait that he had. Which like
totally.
obviously still it was very stupid that he was strolling down the street shooting finger guns at people and like
but
doing that in front of the
that's
doors.
what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying is the execution. Because I think everyone agreed with the idea, but everyone hated the execution. I'm defending the execution. I think the execution was spot on.
Okay, well,
because
I think
again,
I'm gonna leave your hill. You can
because
have it.
again, it was intended to be. I think it was very much intended. It was intended to be campy. It was intended to be. He doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't understand the situation.
Todd would have liked the reactions in the background to have been more dramatic to get to drive the point home. Is what Todd is saying.
Yeah.
Well, I
and
think
again,
what
like,
I'm saying is that Andrew just has a really good point of view here on this hill that he's chosen to die on.
Yeah. I don't want to talk. I mean, again, like a lot of the same stuff has already been said about this movie. If they would have, the studio, everyone knows this story. The studio fitted, asked for Venom the last second. I think the movie would have been fine with just the black symbiote and then him ending and like trying to get rid of the symbiote, and no one needed Venom, but that was retrofitted in. I also think the Harry Osborn stuff was good. I mean, it could have been better. The whole trilogy was built on that relationship. So it should have ended with Spider-Man, with Peter Parker and Harry Osborn in the clock tower, and not Peter Parker and Topher Grace. In the clock tower. That's my hot take.
That's actually a pretty good like solution to that movie.
Yeah.
That would have gotten them to the fourth installment.
I think so. I think they for whatever reason they tripped over the finish line. They're like, no, we got to do Venom right now, and it's just it needed a whole movie, and like we saw, maybe it needed more. Maybe it needed more than two. All right. So I think we covered this a little bit, but let's dive in a bit. So if you could implement just one fix. And I'll cede my time because I basically said what mine was. But if you could just put in one fix to improve your movie, what would it be?
So the answer is, again, pacing. I mean, I think that's the answer. But like to pull that apart a little bit more, I think that they obviously put too much in, that they tried to get Spider-Man to be like this huge hero when he was still kind of a ground level hero, that they could have saved in that third movie, that if they were going to bring Harry in the second movie, they could have turned the Green Goblin turn at the third movie, not the second movie. Also, this is just like a real quick quip in here, and I don't think the other two Spider-Man trilogies have done this near as much. They talked, or at least hinted or discussed, a lot of Peter's parents in the Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, which is not something the other trilogies have done. So
Yeah.
Peter's parents are like spy scientists. They
Really?
were, yeah. So like, and that's the thing. We don't need to talk about it, and that's my note in here. I don't care to learn about it. It's not relevant to what's going on here.
It was all building into that same Sinister Six story.
Yeah,
Sure.
Because like their research was trying to replicate the Sinister Six were trying to replicate their research.
yeah. There was a whole tie that like Peter's parents had been doing research that tied him to Dr. Connors, that was going to tie to Oscorp and all this stuff. Just again, like convoluted things that could have been solved with pacing. And the last thing that I want to say, so I did the tally of how many bad guys were in this movie, and so the answer may surprise you.
Oh, no.
So Green Goblin is there, Rhino is there, Shocker is there. They also introduce
Wait, Shocker and Electro?
Oh, sorry, Electro. I put they're the same person. No,
Everybody
like,
does that. They're the same.
yeah,
they're
sorry,
basically the
Electro. Black Cat, the character, the Felicity Jones. I think that's her name.
same.
yeah.
Black
she
Cat was in
is.
that too.
So she is not technically Black Cat yet, but she,
Oh,
the character,
character.
is introduced.
Sure.
had like a
much.
walkthrough role.
Yes.
Oh, because they killed off Gwen Stacy, so they needed another love interest.
Well, or so initially, this is way in the weeds. So they had casted someone for Mary Jane, but then they didn't put her in the second one, and so I think they were going to bring her in the third one. My thought is if they were going to ram jam Sinister Six in, they were going to need to give Spider-Man some sort of ally, which I think could have been Black Cat, because sometimes she's an enemy, sometimes she's an ally, whatever. Also, little known fact I totally forgotten about, Alistair Smythe, if you recognize that name from Spider-Man. So
I don't.
So first off, he starts as this like scientist, rich guy, smart guy who builds robots that try to kill Spider-Man. He ultimately then becomes a mutant with laser beams on his shoulders.
yeah, he was.
What?
Yeah, he was played by B.J. Novak in this movie.
Holy shit.
B.J. Novak
Novak
had
was in that
a
movie.
brief cameo, and he was Alistair
cool.
Smythe.
Does he have
I
a
just
mutant
started.
name that I would recognize?
Huh?
I'm not sure. I think
Alistair
he's just,
Smythe?
I think it's just Alistair Smythe.
Alistair Smythe.
Sure.
Just gotta look it up. You'll see him and you'll recognize him then.
I about a month ago I started rewatching the 90s Spider-Man cartoon, which like I mentioned a little bit is so bad, but it's so it's so good bad. But he's like episode 2, Alistair Smythe, and he's a big recurring
very
presence,
early on.
apparently, yeah.
So that is 5. That is 5 living, breathing, either enemies or soon to be potential enemies.
that's a lot.
Also, they then hinted at Kraven the Hunter and Mysterio in the post-credit scenes. Like, so we are up to 5 bad guys with 2 more on the way
Yeah.
Yep.
in one movie.
And Homecoming had Vulture. That's it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I guess Shocker kinda.
Yeah, Shocker was in there.
Like Shocker 0.5.
Tinkerer was in there, technically.
Like right, especially
Scorpion
right at this time,
was in there, technically.
WB and Sony were both trying to get their Avengers movie out
Right.
with the plan to like tell the backstories afterwards
Yeah.
and learning how bad a decision that was.
But the thing I would say the difference, so obviously like Spider-Man Homecoming dropped some of those characters in small bits and pieces, but then kind of like left them alone. These were like, I mean, 2 huge bad guys up in your face the entire time, and then Rhino was teased to be one of those bad guys, and then also Sinister Six coming. So like they obviously just really jumped the gun.
If I remember the news right, we were 2 movies away from a Sinister Six movie at that point.
I think at that point they were talking about doing a Sinister Six trilogy in its own right. Like they were going to be the center of a movie, which I could not want at all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't. No, thank you.
Anyway, pacing, and don't
Okay,
do
pacing.
this.
Kyle, what about Man of Steel? What do you got that isn't already pacing?
So the first pacing. The second is just not have Zack Schneider, who can't tell a non-chronological story, trying to tell a non-chronological story. Like, just get that out of there and do it straightforward and get the story out you want. But my other big one is how they killed Jonathan Kent, which we talked about.
Yep.
So in the comics, Jonathan Kent dies. Similar, there's a tornado, and similar in that there's a tornado at the same time. not involved in his death in any way. In the comics, when Jonathan Kent dies, it's one of these kind of fixed points in time in the comics. In a comic that has time travel and stuff, Jonathan Kent always dies. Superman is off fighting a monster, saving a town from a tornado. It's a different thing whenever the story's been told. But he saves the day when he picks up on with his super hearing the sound of his dad's heart stop beating. And he rushes home too late, he can't save him. And it's always this moment of like, no matter how he can be the biggest, the fastest, the strongest, there'll just be someone he can't save.
You can't save everyone, yeah.
And they did away with that emotional impact, the core of Superman's character, to have Jonathan Kent tell his son, keep your secret safe. People can't know you're Superman, which is it's just terrible. It like removes the whole, if you're going to tell that story without that point, you're removing the whole core of Superman's character.
Yeah.
It's like having Batman's parents die in a car crash instead of being shot down in an alleyway.
I like that twist of like, he learns the lesson that he can't save everyone and he will never be like quite strong enough, which sticks with him to like better himself without the stupid tornado scene.
That's so dumb and just it's not necessary.
The story of like Superman being off saving other people to like try and help others, but then having a personal sacrifice be made because of it is a way better character development story.
And like, and easy to buy. Like, no one's gonna argue that.
Yeah,
I mean,
he was saving the orphanage so that it didn't become an oil factory.
Like,
and that's way better.
something. He had to make a decision. Something. The trolley problem. Like, that's great.
Yeah,
and that's the core of what makes every Superman, like, that's what makes a good Superman story from a bad one. The bad ones are where you can punch the thing to death or outfast it, and then the good ones are, he had to save Lois Lane or stop the orphanage fire. Like, that's my biggest thing. Like, you change that, you kind of add that heart, that sense of like heart and him having to try and fail to it. That's what makes him a relatable character. It's what makes him the human part of Superman.
And then cut 30 minutes out of the movie somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right.
Which you do by telling the story right in order and not having to go back and explain what was ununderstandable because it's out of order.
Because no comic book movie needs to be 3 hours.
No.
I don't care who directed it. I don't care what it's about. I don't want to sit 3 hours through a comic book movie. I just don't. Matt, Ghost Rider, how you gonna fix it?
Not
at all. Got it.
Right, exactly. I want to talk about Ghost Rider 2, Ghost Rider (2), Spirit of Vengeance in this question as opposed to the first Ghost Rider, because again, I don't think that you really need to fix the original Ghost Rider. You can tinker with it and make it better. It's never going to be a great movie, but it's fine as it is. Ghost Rider 2, on the other hand, absolute dumpster fire. Hot trash, literal garbage, not worth the $2.99 I spent to rent it on Amazon for 48 hours. It's awful. A movie that makes
someone pay us $50 and make Matt talk about this movie for an hour and a half, for an hour-long podcast.
I will. I'll do it, because
that bell has been rung.
I've got lots of thoughts about this movie, and I'm not going to put them all in this podcast. But again, I would like to reiterate, this is a movie that makes you think about Ghost Rider's penis, not once, but twice. 2 whole ass times. There's a
2 more
scene.
times than I really wanted to.
Yeah. There's an actual cutscene that makes you think about Ghost Rider's penis, which is bad.
Nobody calls it a cutscene in a movie.
So
it's what it is. Go ahead.
That made me think. That reminded me. Has anyone seen in the 90s, they did an X-Men swimsuit issue?
What?
No.
And there was
I've heard about this.
And there's a full spread one of Ghost Rider, and the joke is that he's nude because he's a like skeleton on fire, just with nothing on. He does not like wearing underwear or pants or anything. And that was their like centerfold of that issue, was the full spread. Ghost Rider.
I hate the picture that I'm seeing. I hate
the one with the Punisher just wearing a skull over his crotch is great. Also, I wanted to edit what I said earlier. I said Felicity Jones is Black Cat. Actually, the character's name is Felicity Hardy. The actress's name is Felicity Jones. I'm an idiot, and you could probably understand how that would be confusing when you're trying to keep those two things straight.
Okay, so I want to finish talking about Ghost Rider 2 now. Thank you for making me look at nude Ghost Rider, which I hate. So yeah, Ghost Rider 2, and I call it a cutscene because that's literally what it is, and that's what the whole movie is riddled with. This trash of a movie was directed by the guys who directed Crank. It's awful. It's so bad. And it has all of these moments where like the movie is happening and then it like has a cutscene where it's animated completely differently than the rest of the movie and like jumps away into this weird like hand-drawn comic book style. And then sometimes they're like just JPEG images of politicians. It's got like weird anti-capitalist undertones. This movie's a mess. But I am here to say that you can fix it with one thing, and by fix it I mean make it consumable, and that is you got to take out Nicolas Cage. Because where Nicolas Cage was really, really good for the first movie, the second movie is based on a different iteration of Ghost Rider. So it's still Johnny Blaze, and again, Ghost Rider lore is disgustingly convoluted, but to give you a like 3 bullet points that you need to know, Johnny Blaze is the first Ghost Rider with a flaming skull and a motorcycle. Bullet point 1. Bullet point 2, that Ghost Rider is the spirit of vengeance known as Zarathos. It's a demon that the devil infused in Johnny Blaze. Point 3, Johnny Blaze is sometimes infused with Zarathos. Sometimes Zarathos like fucks off and does his own thing and leaves Johnny Blaze as this like Punisher type guy. And Johnny Blaze is this person who pops up as sort of a mentor for all of the other people who become Ghost Rider in Marvel Comics. Those are the 3 bullet points you need to know.
Woof.
You went through like 8 stages of comic book lore.
Yeah.
In 3 bullet points.
Uh-huh.
Like you took a straight shot to the deep lore.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So here we are in Ghost Rider 2, Spirit of Vengeance, which again is not actually a sequel. The directors are like, this is a retelling, but it has the same actor in the same role as the title character, which is bad. And they based it off of a 2005 6-book miniseries called Ghost Rider. It's like Enter Damnation or The Search for Damnation or something like that. Anyway, it was written by Garth Ennis, who is the guy who wrote the comics of the Amazon series The Boys.
Oh.
And his whole thing is that superheroes ruined comic books. He likes darkness and evil and whatever. And the directors of Crank did a whole bunch of cocaine, read a Garth Ennis book, and were like, how dark can we make a Ghost Rider movie?
Oh, yeah.
And it's super dark. It's too much CGI. Although there is this cool moment where Ghost Rider imbues this giant construction machine with hellfire and has this skyscraper tall blade cutting up people. I don't know, whatever. But the whole thing is that you have this movie that is very, very different, is based on a different time of Ghost Rider, like a completely different thing, and you have the exact same actor playing the same character. And that is not something that you can do. Like, even if you want it to be an older Johnny Blaze and a Johnny Blaze who has been through hell and been to hell and back and yada, 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 you can't put Nicolas Cage in there twice and throw out literally everything from the first movie, which in the first 5 minutes, they give you a new origin story for Nicolas Cage's Johnny Blaze.
It would be like having Hugh Jackman as Wolverine in the first X-Men movie, and then bringing him back when they reboot the franchise with new people, and then having him again in a third.
Yeah. It's like, you know how you watched Logan and it felt a little weird because you're like, this isn't the Hugh Jackman Wolverine I've always known. And I get it because it's Hugh Jackman and he's Wolverine and this is a story that's darker, but like it just feels weird. Now imagine that, except it's Nicolas Cage and it's full Nicolas Cage.
Matt, you're selling me on it. I really want to watch it now because you basically told me it's Logan, but with full Nicolas Cage. That's like the perfect movie.
That sounds
Matt,
pretty good.
in their defense, they had to make this movie, or they would have had to have sold the rights back to Marvel.
Yep,
Which they did 2 years later. 2 years later, they just gave it back.
Yeah.
Because I think that if a movie goes, I think it's like 7 years without being, if a property goes 7 years, I think it is, without having a movie made, then it will automatically revert back. But obviously, like, there are sharing agreements. Like, technically, Universal owns the Hulk, so you won't see a Hulk solo movie, but you'll see like Hulk being in movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So to conclude this question, if you take Nicolas Cage out of Ghost Rider 2, it's a consumable piece of media. I'm not going to say it's good, but you can watch it and it's okay.
Matt, in true Debate This fashion, who would you cast as Johnny Blaze in place of Nicolas Cage in this movie?
Kyle, literally anybody else. Like, any other actor. Anyone. Actually, anyone. I think the answer that I want is this guy named Doug Jones, who is a horror icon character actor who would have done a better job as a tormented Johnny Blaze. But I haven't put a lot of thought into that. Again, literally anyone other than Nicolas Cage, and it's fine.
Gotcha. All right.
What about the guy who plays the not always bad guy but sometimes bad guy from Lost?
Oh, the guy I talked about a while ago as a pervert science teacher?
Wait,
shit.
hang on. James Josh Hollow. Is that yeah. James Sawyer Ford, that's his name.
Yeah, sure. Literally anybody other than
Okay.
Nicolas Cage.
All right, let's take a break. We're gonna take a quick break here, and then when we come back, we're done talking about Ghost Rider probably for a while. So you're welcome. But we're gonna do just a little quick round robin about the current state of these superhero movies and talk a little bit more about tone and theme when we come back.
Well, hidey-ho, neighborinos. Matt here. I've never watched Simpsons. Anyway, you have probably heard us talk about our Patreon a lot over the last couple of weeks. To be completely honest with you, we're just really excited that there are people out there who are that interested in supporting us that they would be willing to pitch in a little extra a month. We also understand there are tons of you who love to support the show and either don't have the funds or aren't super interested in joining with a Patreon, and that's totally okay. We would love to call on some of you folks to help support us in another way. One of the best ways for podcasts to grow and spread around the internet are with fresh user reviews. Podcast platforms see high-star reviews and assume that enough people like those shows that they should start advertising them to their other users. Now, while it is our ultimate goal to make sure every known being in the universe becomes part of #ButtSwampNation, we just don't have the spread amongst the four of us to make it happen alone. And that's why we are calling on you, our loyal listener, to help us out a little bit and drop a 5-star review or a 4-star review, or maybe even a 3-star review. Whatever you feel like reviewing us, if you could just drop a review on whatever your podcast app of choice is, that would be great. A lot of people will push you to review on iTunes. I know I haven't opened iTunes since like 2009, so if you're listening on Spotify or CastBox or Stitcher or I don't know, whatever the hell else is out there these days, see if you can find a way to review the show and just give us a little bit of interaction. It would really help us out, and we would appreciate you forever and ever for it. I'm sure there's only about half an hour left in this episode, give or take, so hopefully that is not too much time for you to forget what I just asked you to do. But if you did already, please leave us a review. It would really help, and we really need some of those. Okay, thanks, bye.
All right, we're back. So we talked a lot about movies that we all secretly love and are often hated by others in the internet. So I want to shift gears just a little bit and just talk about superhero movies in general. I think one of the things we've talked about most today is tone, and to that, just a couple things. So obviously we've seen a ton of success with the MCU, and I would argue in the last 3 or so years they've definitely been almost all hits, maybe with some like rare exceptions, but we've definitely passed the like Avengers Age of Ultron and Thor 2 period.
Yeah.
Whereas 10, 15, 20 years ago, a good superhero movie was a fluke. It was a hidden gem. For every Blade, there was 3 more Fantastic Fours with the guy from Nip Tuck.
For every Tim Burton's Batman, there was a Joel
Schumacher's Batman. Yeah, exactly. So what do you guys think? And we'll keep this quick. Give me let's hear 1 or 2 total answers. What makes this most recent batch of movies so consistently good? Is there this magical formula, or is it just that the world is more into superheroes now?
So I've got a very easy answer that it goes into kind of the theme that I've said today is pacing. And I would add to it that it feels as though the movies that aren't trying to move so many chess pieces and aren't trying to check so many boxes tend to be the best. That from the Marvel side of things, if you look at the original Guardians of the Galaxy, so obviously it had the MacGuffin of the Power Stone. Obviously it talked about Thanos and it showed him. But other than that, their story was just to be weird, space pirates, Suicide Squad in space situation where it was just you're just going to introduce some characters, they're going to have a good time, and they're going to loosely tie into the universe through these 2 things. And it made it a good movie. And I think, obviously, this is where the DCCU has fallen a lot. And the only outings that I would say have done a good job of fixing this would be specifically Wonder Woman was a pretty good movie because it wasn't trying to set up a ton of shit. It was you got Wonder Woman's backstory and how she's kind of going to tie into Batman vs. Superman, but that's about it.
Yeah.
So I would say when they're not trying to cram so much in, it becomes a better movie. And the case in point, the opposite of this would be Thor 2, where it was literally just a movie to try and set up a bunch of shit for what was coming next, and everyone universally disliked it.
Yep. Fair.
The thing I've been thinking about, that kind of the difference between the bad movies of that time, the good movies of that time, and then what the good movies, the movies that do well today, all have in common, is the good ones are family movies, and try to be that movie the parents will enjoy taking kids to, fit that Star Wars spot. The bad ones from the early 2000s and 90s tried to be teen or kid movies, where they're there's always a fart joke. The female lead ends up in her underwear at some point in every one of those movies. They don't trust their audience to stick with them through a superhero movie unless they're pandering to that base crowd.
Halle Berry dribbles the shit out of a basketball.
Halle Berry takes 4,000 cuts to shoot one basket in 2.5 minutes.
It's very bad. If anyone out there hasn't gotten this joke already, please look up Catwoman basketball scene. It's so cringy bad.
It's real
very,
bad.
Very, very bad.
As bad as we are talking about it, it's worse than that.
It's amazing how all of those people, all of those actors in that scene are just aren't just absolutely fuck no, absolutely not doing this.
There's everyone from shooting it to the day it got released in theaters, watched that scene and decided that makes it into the final cut.
It went through so many checks. Anyway, go ahead, Kyle. Sorry.
That's basically the difference between the good and the bad is they don't talk down to the audience. They expect everyone showing up to these movies to at least meet them halfway and be on board for a superhero movie so they can get out of the way of everything else and just otherwise be a good action movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think to kind of wrap up what both of you guys have said and to just conclude, I think there sort of is a secret formula. And I think that the MCU has kind of fine-tuned it. And I think that that formula is don't get caught up in the backstory. Like we've said on this podcast a bunch of times, I don't need to watch Uncle Ben die. I don't need to watch the Waynes get shot. They're a superhero. I get it. You know, if it's a character like Iron Man, spend 5-10 minutes building an interesting backstory, but you don't need to show me just the moment of trauma and then jump forward like so many of the 90s and 2000s superhero movies did. So don't focus on the backstory. Give me a diluted, consumable superhero movie. So give me a movie that I can watch and have not read the comic books and still enjoy the story. And movies like, I don't know, Ant-Man did a really good job of that. Thor Ragnarok did a really good job of that, where if you've watched all the other movies or you've read the comics, you'll get all of the Easter eggs. But if you come in cold off the street, Black Panther is another really good example. Like if you come in cold off the street, you can watch a superhero movie that is fun and looks cool, and you know the names of the 5 main characters and the villain, and that's all you need. And I think that that's really important.
I think the thing the MCU learned is that they were willing to change the canon. Like they would divert from comic book canon so that the villain is somewhat involved in the origin story as well as the third act, like through the second act and third act, where like I'm pretty sure like Daredevil and I'm sure a couple others, like the first act of Daredevil is just the origin story with the chemicals in his eyes. And then 2 and 3 is the whole boxing and dad storyline. Like it takes a
I feel like they've kind of dabbled with that for a long, because I'm thinking back to Tim Burton's Batman, and the original Batman, wasn't it like the Joker was the guy that shot his parents in the Tim Burton one?
Yeah.
Was something weird like that?
Which might be comic book canon, actually.
I don't think
it is.
Okay,
comic
cool.
book canon is someone named a criminal named Joe Chill.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I'm
Tight.
Joe Chill.
Tim Burton famously didn't read the comics either.
Yeah.
Well, I think to part of what Matt said about like don't get lost in the weeds of the origin story, I think one of the other early ones that did this really, really well was Doctor Strange. That 10 or 12 minutes into the movie, like he has his car accident. And it sets you off like to go.
Not even that long. He's in Tibet in
They're like
12 minutes.
he is if Tony Stark were a neurosurgeon, that is this guy.
Yep.
Also, he's really cocky, and it's gonna come to get him. Oh, it got him.
Yeah.
We're doing this now.
Yeah, I think you've cited that before. I think that's probably one of the best examples. Maybe that or Captain Marvel of like pacing an origin story of a character that no one knows about.
Yeah. And then my last bit of the secret formula is that you can't take it too seriously. And I think that is the downfall of most of the 2000s movies, is that they are so
agree with that more.
so serious. And that, honestly, all of those reasons are part of the reason that I think Ghost Rider is good. But another example of that, I think, is Hellboy. Like the first Hellboy was the right amount of backstory, the right amount of diluted consumable story, and the right amount of like campy jokiness without losing, this is a serious situation, but we can still laugh about it, which I think is what the MCU has done so well, and I think is also why the DCCU continues to flop, because they just force the dark on you, which is DC's whole thing, but like...
Well, and then when they tried to correct it and make Batman vs. Superman and Justice League funny, they overcorrected and just it was too like, haha, like 1,000 people but just died, but funny quip, like...
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really good segue. And the last thing I want to talk about, which to bring up again, camp, which like I said, I think it's really, really crucial to the comic book world. And I think about just like the old comic books with the bang, thwip, like they all have, and all the inner monologuing and just all the just general silliness. And that's the one thing that's pervasive in all these things is just like comics are silly, man. Like I don't care how gritty you want to be, like it's just a silly thing. and Matt already mentioned this, but everything, became much more serious after the 2000s. Post 9/11 superheroes are much grittier than pre 9/11 superheroes, and I think we have a lot of that. We have Batman Begins to thank for that. So take for that what you will. Do you guys, give me a tight two, but is there room for camp? And I'm not talking Guardians of the Galaxy camp, but I'm talking about like the original Batman, like the Adam West Batman, the Adam West Batman, where it was like just silly fun. Like, would that even be able to exist anymore?
I'll give you the quickest answer, and that's no, and here's why. Just because it's definitely not gonna fly in a full movie. Maybe they could do it in a quick like one-off fun thing, but I think what we get instead of like standalone camp is now we get fun winks and nods to things like that. And the best example that I had written down is that Spider-Man 3, barring everything that happened in 1 and 2 now in the current Spider-Man trilogy, this next one with Tom Holland could start with him like busting up a heist by Paste Pot Pete. And he could say, and it could be Paste Pot Pete, a dude with a glue gun and a vat on his back. Yeah. And it could be very like campy and jokey, but that's like the first 3 minutes of the movie, and then it moves on. Or like when when Wong saves Iron Man's life in Infinity War, and he says, "Wong, you're invited to my wedding," before he takes off. Like, I think we get those fun, really lighthearted movies in these really serious moments, and that is the camp that we now get. We will not get like the old Adam West camp. Yeah. We're not ever gonna get that, but we'll get small winks and nods.
Somebody bring back the Tick. That's what we really need.
Yeah, that's the thing. You're not gonna get that'll have to be its own thing again on an Amazon Prime special, which I think it was for a bit.
So I'll jump in and say I think we do get a little bit of that old camp. It's rare, but it happens. The one that comes to mind is the gigantic Pac-Man in Guardians of the Galaxy 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty campy, And like, granted, we brought up Guardians as the example of camp, but other than that, you also get kind of the camp shrouded in irony in like Into the Spider-Verse with the like, okay, here's the story, and like each new Spider-Man starts is tired of telling their origin story.
Yeah.
Like that's campy, but it's ironic camp. That's how we get our camp nowadays. Is like you have to tell people it's camp because the dum-dums that come see the movie don't get camp is basically what it is. So you have to sneak it in on them.
Sure.
Yeah, I honestly I had pulled up a couple of examples of things that I thought were like recently campy and decent, and the Tick was the first thing that I pulled up. The second thing I pulled up was Kick-Ass. The first one.
Good call.
Yeah.
Which is like, I like that movie a lot.
I do too. Both of the Kick-Asses I think are really good, but the first one I think is a good amount of camp, and it's pretty dark. But it's got that real campy undertone. I also
Shazam's another good example too. Of like
Shazam's
recent.
Pretty campy.
I would say Shazam is a terrible example of a good movie, but I'm not here to make that argument today.
I really liked Shazam. I thought it was really a lot of fun.
Shazam, but I think I hated the actor more than anything. But all right, anyway.
Fair.
Superhero movie in the era of spoof movies starring Drake Bell as like the Dragonfly or whatever the hell. And then the one that really kind of jumped to mind as like campy superhero movies was The Incredibles and The Incredibles 2. Which are still superhero movies, and I think are dripping in a lot of good camp. And Into the Spider-Verse is a good example too, but I think that you can do a campy movie. You've just got to commit to the bit. You've got to go all in 100% of the way. Like Kyle said, you got to tell them it's camp, and whether you do that in the branding or you do it in the movie, like, commit to the bit or it's not gonna go. And I think the Adam West Batman committed to that bit, so if you're asking if you could make an Adam West style or an Adam West Batman style movie in 2020, I think you can do it if you commit to the bit.
They did already, and it's called Lego Batman.
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
Will Arnett he's playing a very Adam West Batman, and
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
and I haven't
And
seen
people
it,
liked
but it's
it.
It's
well loved.
That's
Really
where
I really liked
that's
it.
where camp can live.
Yeah,
in
I
the
really
Lego
liked
movie, like it
Yep,
can.
that's a good. I think that's the right answer. Cool. Well, with that, let's break for today. And thanks everybody for listening in. Speaking of committing to the bit, why don't you follow along on our arguments on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at DebateThisCast. You can check out our website at debatethiscast.com. And finally, if you haven't heard about it yet, we are on Patreon. It's no longer new, so I'm going to update these notes here, but we are definitely on Patreon. And we have a couple of levels if you are open to and willing to subscribe or donate, whatever verb you want to use. You can choose to patron us at the $2 level to be a part of our Discord, where we talk about a lot about these kinds of things. We talk about the latest video games, the latest Marvel movies, and most commonly cursed images. Which,
Man, our Discord is a wild, weird, great, terrible time.
big shout out to at Chrissy Lynn, who is just blown up
crushing the cursed images.
really
channel.
brought a very unique energy. So,
I checked it
thank
while
you
we
for
were
that.
recording this, and I shouldn't have. It's
Yeah.
rough in there.
At $5, that's the meat and potatoes right there. Then you have access to our premium feed, which is right now home of the Office Drones, the Forbogorfin, the Office Drones, Dungeons and Dragons campaign. But that's Dungeons and Dragons isn't very much in air quotes. It's not your dad's D&D. It's just D&D about staplers.
It is
So
actually, in
check
fact,
that
your
out.
dad's D&D.
Actually, yeah, it's
your
probably
dad might
best
be in
described
this.
as your dad's D&D. We're having a really fun time with that. We just released another episode. Well, it would have been last week as this recording, so we'll probably have released another one by this point. So yeah, thumbs up. And then finally, for the big ticket item, if you decide to patron us at $50, and that's $50 one time, not necessarily monthly, you will have the ability to commission your own flavor text episode. Now, at the time of this recording, we haven't released it yet, but it should be out before this comes out. Our very first commissioned flavor text, which was about Guy Fieri. So when we say we will talk about anything, we
We will
mean
talk about anything.
we mean Ron Burgundy will read whatever is anything that's on the teleprompter. However that woman says it in that movie. You know, I just referenced a
I get it's a good
17-year-old
one.
movie.
It's a good one.
Until next time, I'm Andrew Henderson.
I'm Kyle, Holy Rusted Manhole Batman Harper.
I'm Todd. Bring BJ Novak to the MCU along with Paul Giamatti, Thomas.
And I'm Matt. I thought about Ghost Rider's penis. Now you have two. Cole.
Again.
We're saying thanks for debating with us, and if you think Matt's wrong, then you can specifically come and fight him behind the proverbial swing sets.
Where we've tied him up and he can't fight back.
Common nerds. See ya, everybody.